All right, kings, gentlemen, everyone else. It's time to have another conversation. And this time I was thinking maybe let you know why I don't think NATO is a good alliance. Last time we were talking about what NATO is, right? Today I mentioned offhand that this is not really a good idea. It's not really good at its stated purpose, which is the defense of Europe, the defense of the member states. And let me just tell you some of my objections to it. So, why do I object to NATO? And the short answer is because it's too big. And in theory, having a big alliance, an alliance of states which is so big that it is really the single greatest accumulation of military might in the history of mankind, that's theoretically a good thing, right? In practice, it's 30, I don't even remember how much, 30-something member states. Now that Sweden and Finland have joined. Well, Finland and Sweden, because Finland joined first before Sweden. So it's now such a large and sprawling alliance that the member states don't really have much in terms of common geopolitical objectives. Now, for example, why was Sweden's accession delayed? Well, it was delayed because Turkey had some bone to pick with Sweden. Turkey had a bone to pick with Sweden because Sweden was generally pro-Kurdish in the Middle East. Sweden had extended asylum to several Kurdish leaders, and of course the Turks don't want that. The Turks don't really like this idea of Kurdish independence because that would mean carving off a chunk of Turkey, or even if it doesn't, even if you're just making a Kurdish state out of Iraqi and Syrian and maybe even Iranian Kurdistan, well, this still threatens the Turks because they have a sizable Kurdish minority. No matter how much they say that Kurds are actually mountain Turks, fact of the matter is Kurds speak a Persian language, not a Turkic language. They are demonstrably different in behavior from Turks, in culture, and all these things. Don't really want to get into it too much, but it is Sweden's prerogative as a sovereign state to pick and choose its allies, and so is Turkey's prerogative. But because of the NATO structure, Erdogan was able to extort some concessions from Sweden in exchange for a cession. You got the situation now where there's really several groups within NATO which each would like the alliance to prioritize their own regional concerns, their own security concerns. Of course, you've got the states of Central and Eastern Europe, so that would be Poland, that would be the Baltic states, and Romania, and to them the biggest threat is Russia, and NATO was built as an alliance all the way in the 50s to counter Soviet and Russian aggression. So yeah, Poland, Baltic states, they're all very, very much in line with what they would like the alliance to do. And of course, new member states, Finland and Sweden, are on board with that. And so is Norway, which shares a border with Russia, and so is the United Kingdom, which does not share a border with Russia, traditionally speaking. But if you look at a map of the Arctic Circle, where the United Kingdom does have maritime interests, well, yes, it does. The British space roughly rubs against the Russian space in the Arctic. So the real point of conflict between Russia and the United Kingdom is in the high north, thus not readily visible on a map of Europe. And then you have the Western Europeans, and here I include Germany, even though Germany is technically part of Central Europe, right? But Central and Eastern Europe, we use that to refer to a different group of countries. And these countries have their own interests, right? France would like to have independent power projection. They would like to have Franco-Freak back, if that is possible. Now, for the time being, this has put them on a collision course with Russia. But in the future, because, of course, Russia is dicking around in the Franco-Freak, in the French Africa region, in Niger, in the Sahel, all of these places. And now that Russian supply base in Syria has been, well, cleared out. The French can now move back in because the local thugs, they no longer have Russian support. So we're going to see what happens there. If the French want to regain their positions in French Africa and Niger and all these places in Mali, now's the time to do it. And then you have the North Americans, Canada and the USA, which, let's face it, these two countries more or less have the same foreign policy. Now, they also come into conflict points with Russia, again, in the high north, in the Arctic, and there's, of course, the whole Russo-American superpower versus superpower thing. But the Russians have been basically the sick man of superpowers for so long, the Americans would like to reorient themselves towards Asia. They've wanted to do it for a very long time, all the way back to the George Bush era. You could say that America wanted to sort of shut down the European theater of operations, get that front to calm down and focus on East Asia. Whether that's possible, whether that's feasible or not, well, it is what it is. You got the Southern Europeans, you got the Spanish, you got the Italians, again, part of NATO, to a lesser degree the Greeks, but the Greeks, they need to sort their shit out. And they would like to stabilize North Africa because it's right there in their backyard. And I support them in this endeavor, And in this sense here, they are somewhat aligned with the French because the Sahel region is right, directly due south of North Africa, and the one really follows the other. But you got a bunch of these sort of regional groups of NATO, and each has their own priorities, and they're all theoretically aligned with each other, but the alliance is so big that it's very difficult to reach consensus on how to act, and so the alliance doesn't really act. You got a lot of inaction as part of NATO because it's so difficult to build consensus. And gone are the days of, like Tom York says, we are the United Nations and I'm America. Whatever I say goes. No, it's really a lot more consensus-based than anyone thinks. The Americans can't act alone as much as they would like to believe. You remember the Iraq War was coalition of the willing. America, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Poland. No other country sent troops to Iraq. I'm definitely missing someone, but I'm operating from memory here. Anyways, yeah, so because the alliance is so big, and because it operates by consensus, it falls into indecision and inaction. And in military matters, indecision is worse than bad decision. Inaction is worse than bad action. If you make a bad decision, if you take bad actions, you can fail, you can cut your losses, and you can learn from your failure. But you cannot learn from indecision. You're just sitting there. You're full of potentiality, but there is no concretization of your potentiality. And without, you need good concretization because you need results, but bad concretization gives you data which you can use to improve your position. I'm just restating the same thing with fancier language. So TLDR, fail often, fail early. That's what you get when you're decisive, when you're small, when you're agile, when you're lean. NATO is the opposite of that. And because of that, I think that either NATO should be sort of devolved into some sort of overarching common purpose type alliance, or it should be abandoned in favor of a different security framework for the European peoples. And for that, you're going to have to go to radicaldose.com, which is my webzine, where I am freer to discuss these issues without the threat of YouTube censorship. But that is the long and short of why I believe NATO is a flawed, and not even just flawed, broken alliance, which does not serve the interest of its member states. And I guess I'll see you next time. Cheers.